now. Okay. Okay, my name is Will Fellows. I'm an astrologer in the Villages of Florida, and my wife Wendy Barta and I are the village astrologers, and also run the astrologers of the Villages club. And this talk will be on the mundane year ahead. It's the forecast for the United States of America's chart for the year ahead, and it will be a mundane talk. And I will be having two parts to this talk. Using the outer planet energies from Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And then I will also be looking at the solar return chart for the United States of America. So we'll proceed. This is an introduction. I'll give a slight introduction to mundane astrology. And again, when we talk about the natal charts, that's for the individual. Mundane astrology is astrology of worldly events, and that's in contrast for the individual. And it's used in interpretations and forecasts involving politics, the stock markets, countries, weather, and disasters. So a lot of the ancient astrologers were very much mundane astrologers because they were advising the kings and queens and royalties and rulers of the countries. So mundane astrology was very, very important. And of course, great astrologers like William Lilly and stuff did a lot of mundane and horary astrology. That's another branch. Okay, now the planets in mundane astrology take on a little different meaning because they're dealing with countries. And countries are composed of their people, their cultures, their activities, their locations, their geopolitical. So I'm going to go through the planets with the luminaries and also the nodes in Chiron for a mundane chart. Now, the sun in a mundane chart is the nation's executive. It's also the well-being of the country and the life energy. It's the force and energy of the country. The moon is the emotional state of the country. It's the people. It's the soul. It's the public opinion. I call it the soul of the country. The ascendant is the nation's focus and projection into the world. It's how the nation, as I said in a natal chart, the ascendant is how you project your soul, your sun's energy out to the world. Again, the ascendant is how your country, its people, and its energy is projected out to the world. Mercury, again, is the planet of communications and transportation, networks, and education. So instead, it's on a broader scale. How does the country communicate? How well does it travel? What are its networks and its education? Venus is the value structure of a country, its arts and its entertainments, its social and cultural activities and approaches. Mars is military, the law enforcement, the passions of the people, and how a country will direct its energy, how it approaches things, and what energy and force will put into it. Jupiter's expansion of the country, how it will expand religious and judicial state, and its negotiations. Jupiter deals with the law and in the judicial system. It's a ninth house. Jupiter rules the ninth house. Saturn is government agencies, the bureaucracy, the conservative attitudes, restrictions. Uranus is innovations, how innovative the people are. We're a very innovative country. Technologies, also erratic actions, upheavals, the lightning activities that occur with countries. Neptune is, I call it the divine plan because it's the vision of the country. What is its sole purpose? Its social movements and also the illusions of the country. It shows what's happening. It's a country under a spell or an illusion can be seen by where Neptune is and how the Neptune is also placed in the country's chart and solar returns. Pluto reflects the masses and the mass consciousness, how the country transforms itself, and also the hidden actions, because Pluto is associated with, we'll say, also what's in the underworld type of activities. The nodes, I look at them because they show the karma, as in an individual natal chart, they show, for countries, they also show the karmic actions, the present karmic actions, and the south node shows the past actions. I really like using the nodes in a solar return chart because the south node in that year's solar return chart shows the energies you're bringing in from the previous year, and then the north node will show how the karmic actions can be resolved, what you need to do. And Chiron is always shows the areas that need to be healed and need to be addressed, the wounds that may have been opened during for the country and its achieving in its actual mundane chart. It shows where the country is going to reach for greatest fulfillment. In the solar chart, Chiron shows for that year what needs to be addressed. I like Wendy put together this chart, and this is just a wonderful chart. I like it because it shows the 12 houses. And like I say, it's different than the natal chart, whereas in natal chart, the first house here is the individual. But in a mundane chart, a chart for a country, in our case, it's the Constitution, its foundation documents, the attitudes of the people in the nation, it's the people. The second house is the house of banking, it's finances again, but it's the country's banking, it's the assets of the people, capitalism and wages. Third house is the house of media, communications, also weather, transportation and communications. We've seen this, our third house has been highly activated in the last several years. We've had this, of course, this revolution in social media and means of communications, and we'll see in our charts too. And I've been seeing a lot of this where we have had, social media rising very high, but also now we're in a period of censorship and control by the social media. The fourth house is the house of housing, how we house ourselves and the type of architecture and structures, agriculture, consumer goods, national security, also mining and the land. Fifth house is the stock market, the national pastimes, gambling, how we speculate, how we enjoy ourselves. Sixth house is manufacturing, labor unions, employees, and military, our work environments, and how we approach our work environments. The seventh house is the house of treaties, foreign policy, and also war, when treaties are broken or actions of other nations. This is our country in the first house. Seventh house is other actions. When there will be, threats to our country, you'll see it in the seventh house. Eighth house is, of course, taxes and the national debt, socialized medicine, social security. These is like the social net. The ninth house is the judicial system, the foreign affairs, immigrations, and law. 10th house is the executive, the government, the president, jobs, law enforcement. The 11th house in the mundane chart is the legislature, and the Congress in our case, and voting in elections. You'll see the 11th house, the House of activities in the House of Representatives and legislators. Especially in the past years, this was a very potent house. There was always a lot of things occurring in the Senate and House. The 12th house is the house of secret groups, welfare systems, espionage, hidden enemies, and hospitals for the country. So mundane astrology uses a chart, but instead of a chart being for an individual, as I was saying, it's drawn up for a nation or country. It's like a personal chart. It can be drawn up for, it shows the zodiac, the 12 houses. And what you do is when the birth of a country happens, it's when the founding document is actually signed. And so also you can also create event charts, electional charts for inaugurations, for when you're creating different things for a country. You can do an event chart for a country, a leader's birth and inauguration. In the case of the United States, the most popular chart used is the Sibley chart. And I like the Sibley chart. There are 4 or 5 other charts, and I like the way it has Sagittarius, and it was based upon the time the Constitution, I'm sorry, it should have been the Declaration of Independence was reportedly signed. And the reason why I use Sibley too is a good friend of mine, Tom Roma in Philadelphia, an exceptional astrologer. He had a friend research it, who was a historical researcher, and he actually went to Independence Hall, and he found some documentation. I haven't seen it, but I hope someday to, that it showed that there was it is a Sagittarius chart within 1 or 2 degrees of the usual Sibley chart. Of course, Thomas Jefferson cited that it was sometime around uh, uh, dinner time, and that's usually was 4 or 5 o'clock. Our times for dinner were different because they also had supper, which was a late meal, usually at it could be 9, 10 o'clock. So I think probably the 4 or 5 o'clock Sagittarius chart was correct based on several things. But there was also a Scorpio rising chart, which Jim Cummins used, which uses a time on the back of the $100 bill, which has a time on Independence Hall set that would create a Scorpio chart. Of course, there was the Gemini chart at one time was in vogue, but that's when Jefferson, Franklin, and Adams and there was one other person came to agreement on the document, and they used that time. But I go with when the document was signed. They went in there and put their names, and the contract was set in motion. Okay. So here's the Sibley chart that I use. It's the 12 degrees Sagittarius. This can have some variation degrees. 12 could be one with 14, sometimes an earlier degree. But I like the Sibley chart because it shows this very strong seventh house, the sun, Jupiter, and we have Jupiter and Venus conjunct, and that's why very powerful. The two benefits conjunct in the seventh house. And we certainly have been the leader of nations. Well, also the Saturn in the 10th house, we've also been a nation of great responsibility we've taken on for the world. And Neptune shows in the ninth house, and this is the house of also people, and I mean immigrants and people of foreign lands. And everybody's had the vision of coming to our country, and we were forged from people from other countries. So I like this chart because it does also have the Neptune in the ninth house, and we have been a visionary country and been on the forefront. But again, and Neptune and Virgo in this house, the visions are brought into manifestation through the earth energy. We have a moon in Aquarius in the third house, and we have been the great leader in communications and transportations. Most of the innovations and applications of these new inventions and innovations have affected the way we communicate, the way transportation, and the way we move around. Pluto, we've had great wealth with Pluto and Capricorn, and we brought into our soul mission this Aquarian energy to create this more perfect union. And our mission's been again with the Leo to be a leader and showing of the enlightened way for freedom and individual liberties and freedom. And that's Chiron in the Aries in the fourth house shows that the individual is predominant because Aries is a sign of the individual. And our greatest fulfillment will be protecting the individual from wound and harm. So that's our greatest strength in the home. So I really like this Sibley chart. When somebody asked the question earlier about how on an analysis, I find the key points are, of course, the sun in our Sibley charts is Cancer. You can do the same thing for a natal charts, and this is what I do for individual solar return charts or natal charts. The moon is in Aquarius. That's the soul of the country. That's why we're so innovative and creative. The sun is in Cancer. We've been a very generous and kind but again powerful country because it's cardinal water. Our ascendant is Sagittarius. We've been a beacon of light in truth and inspiration to the world. The ruler of the chart is Jupiter for Sagittarius, and that Jupiter sits in the seventh house, conjunct Venus. Very powerful. And the midheaven is Libra. So we're always trying to actively balance our position in the world. And that's the Libra, cardinal air. We try to, use our mind and our intellect and through our heart to create this balance. So I really like this chart. The sun is conjunct Jupiter. Venus is two benefits are conjunct. Venus and Jupiter are conjunct. Sun is squared Saturn. That's bringing great responsibility, and Neptune is trine Pluto. Okay, I'm going to go into the outer energy just as I did previously for the individual. The sign, the Jupiter, the planets, the outer energies go through for a whole year. So these energies are stationed, we'll say placed within a certain sign for most of the year. So Jupiter is expansion and luck, and it went into Aquarius on December 21st, which was a great conjunction with Saturn happened on that day. And I'm going to talk especially about that because it was in Aquarius. And it will remain in Aquarius until May 13th when it moves briefly into Pisces until July 28th. Then Jupiter goes back into Aquarius until December 30th. and then it moves forward into Pisces for the new year for the full year. Saturn is 2 years in a sign. That's the organizations and lessons for a country and where they need to discipline, just as in a natal chart. And it went into Aquarius on December 21st, and it remains in Aquarius for this whole year. So Saturn will be in Aquarius for the country the whole year. Uranus is now in Taurus. It's 7 years in a sign, so it's going to be there for another 5 to 6 years. So that's the divine will and innovation, and changes. It is in Taurus. Neptune, the planet of this, I call the divine plan, our soul mission, our spirituality, and also our illusions. And it's in the sign approximately 9 years. It's in the about 23 degrees Neptune at the moment, or well, it's in Neptune for another several years. So it is in Pisces. And Pluto now is in Capricorn. It's 10 years or more in the sign. It's at about 23 degrees Capricorn. I think it transitions out of Capricorn in a couple years, but it's the mass consciousness transformations of large groups. We've had with all the planets we went through in Capricorn, the structures of government have been almost overwhelming. The bureaucracy's been overwhelming, and energies are changing, but still it's going to take a couple more years to work out of that Capricorn energy. This is the U.S. Sibley chart with the planets in the outer planets. As I did for the personal, I took the Sibley chart. Now I'm using the exact Sibley chart. And you can see here Pluto, which is in the later degrees of Capricorn, between 23 and 25 degrees, is and going to be in our Pluto will be in our second house. And then we have, of course, Jupiter and Saturn. Saturn will be in our second house throughout the year. And Jupiter is going into Aquarius. It'll be mostly in our second house, and then it has a short foray into the third house. It will be conjuncting our moon 3 times. I had the dates written down, but it'll first transit over and conjunct, then it'll retrograde back over and conjunct again. And then at the very end of the year, it will be, if anybody's interested in those dates, I have them written down. Let me just grab them, and I will give you the dates for those just for, oh yes, Jupiter will conjunct the moon on April 21st for the country. So that's a great time of expansion, and it's still in Aquarius. When it goes into Pisces, it's going to get more emotional. Then when it retrogrades back out of Pisces, it will reconjunct the moon on August 19th, and that'll be the second conjunctions as due to the retrograde. It'll be in the sign of Aquarius throughout December. On December 13th, it does reconjunct the moon again, and then it'll move out at the end of December, and then move fully into Pisces into the third house. So, and Neptune will be in the third house of communications and transportations, and Neptune, the planet of the divine plan, also illusions, is in the third house for the whole year. And Uranus is in Taurus. It will be in our fifth house for the whole year. So as I said, Jupiter in Aquarius is expansion of innovation and organized thoughts, along with greater planning, because Aquarius being fixed to air, will plan things out. It will think it out thoroughly. There will also be interest in new organizations, and there'll be a greater drive for restructuring what exists and expanding the realms of thought. And it's in our second house. So it's going to deal a lot with finances, and I'll get into that a little bit. Jupiter will be going into the U.S. third house in early May in conjunct the moon in Aquarius, and I gave the dates previously. So this will happen 3 times in 2021. This will be fortunate for the country and the people. Communications will improve, and the people will demand that the censorship by corporate media will be lifted. And that happens 3 times. It's not going to happen easy. There's a lot of deplatforming, a lot of activity. We'll see that in the solar return. It's going to take 3 conjunctions of the moon to bring it out and hopefully stop censorship and we'll say suppression of free flow of information. We're seeing a lot of that. And unfortunately, our key is open, free press and free ideas. And there's groups of people that don't believe, they believe in censorship. I always ask the question, who is the arbiter of truth? And the question is, the answer is that we should hear all sides of the truth. Okay, that's my personal commentary. Jupiter will be in Pisces for that brief period, as I said. It'll go from May 13th and then come back out on July 28th. And that's going to be expansion of the country's emotions. And Jupiter returns into Aquarius on the 28th of July and then returns to the second house in early September. So we're going to get that brief third house energy of Jupiter. And I think that might open up the communications, but we won't get it fully opened up because I think there'll be a big emotional demand of the people from Jupiter and Pisces for free and open communications. Saturn and Aquarius, new thinking is in the structure of the organization is implemented. The great teacher Saturn requires that lessons learned need to be applied with deliberate planning and resources for the country. And that's in the second house. Now, I was talking about the Jupiter conjunct Saturn and Aquarius. That happened December 21st. It was exact. And why this is so important, that the great conjunction occurs regularly every 19.6 years. And this has become known as the 20-year cycle of Jupiter and Saturn. This has been very significant in affecting presidencies. As we know, it's been going on for since the 1840s, I think, where presidents that were elected in this 20-year cycle that many times did not finish their presidency. And so, like I say, the last one was 1960. Of course, John F. Kennedy was elected during that period, and he did not survive his presidency. In 1980, Ronald Reagan was elected during that period. An assassination attempt did not fully succeed, but it did cause great damage to him. It was an out of sign. I think one was in Aquarius and one was in Capricorn. So it was an out of sign conjunction that took place, but still he survived, but he was actually going into flatlining. There's some news stories that I've been reading about that they didn't reveal how close to death Ronald Reagan was. And so that now we had the 2000 that nothing manifested there, and but we had election.
Yeah, we had contested elections too.
We had contested election in the year 2000. 1960 was a contested election. And in fact, that came out afterwards that Mayor Daley had basically stuffed the ballots for President Kennedy, that turned Illinois, and that Lyndon Johnson had done the same thing in Texas. And they went to President Nixon, at that time, candidate Nixon, and told him that, but he did not pursue it. So it was election fraud that year. And we had 1980, there wasn't, but 2000 was contested election. And of course, this year in 2020 was a very contested election. And that, but there was hearings and testimony in 7 states, thousands of depositions. So, okay. The Aquarian energy of this aspect brings in fixed mental energy, focus efforts on innovation and new technology. A concern about this intense conjunction is that the expansion of Jupiter will feed the need of Saturn to control. So it's that dance, that polarity. And Aquarius is all about the mental energies of the groups. So this time Jupiter's going to want to expand all this mental energy into new inventions and new thoughts, and Saturn's going to want to focus it into channels, but also Saturn may also say, this is the way we should be thinking. It could lead to groupthink and propaganda. And that's why I think that when Jupiter conjuncts the moon, it's going to be this struggle between innovation and application of innovation, and also the urge to control the means of communication and the means of thinking. Uranus is in Taurus. We talked about that previously in the other talk. Dynamic influences on countries, resources, and finances. It's in the 5th house. And if I just go back here, you see that Uranus is in our 5th house here. And so it's bringing foundation and form to the new ideas and changes that were initiated in Aries. There are so many changes and activities happening in Aries. So the country speculations are steady with fluctuations grounded in Taurus. Taurus is a much more grounding sign. So we'll bring hopefully fruition to all those great innovations. Enjoyment and public happiness improve from a practical application of innovation. Also, it's a Venus sign. People just want to have some happiness. It's not going to happen for a year or two, but I think once the energy of Taurus gets into the past the 15th degree, I think we're going to get more a free flow, especially when Uranus starts sextiling the sun in Cancer and the Sibley, the natal chart of the country. When it starts, Uranus starts sextiling we'll say the Cancer energy of our chart. We're going to break out of this period, this 2 years of, we'll say, contention. It will lead to wages increasing and steady development of the country. And I think it's going to take a couple years to do that when Taurus gets into about the 15th degree. Uranus gets into the 15th degree of Taurus. Dedicated resources to fulfilling goals, infrastructure, construction, and organization. So we have a great opportunity to really improve infrastructure and construction if the money is well spent and placed there, because Taurus requires a budget. It requires well spent, dedicated money. Neptune in Pisces is sympathetic and charitable, deep emotions, highly mystical and spiritual energy. Voyages, strange experiences. You could have times of despair. We've been having times of despair. It's been there. It's been in the U.S. third house, highlighting the need for factual and accurate communications. Look what's been everything in the communication world on social platforms and media and communication has been, we'll say, an ebb and flow of back and forth of what's truth, what's factual, what is accurate, what isn't. And that's the Neptune and Pisces in the third. Plans for improved transportation can be created, but need to be realistic. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be created that may never manifest. And that's why it needs to be well founded. And with Uranus and Taurus, I think will help us found that. But Neptune's been, it's a wonderful sign for new visions and psychic abilities and increasing the psychic of the country. But also you have to be careful that you're not being blinded by illusion. Now, Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn gives power to authority and organizations and large groups, autocratic, engaged in large actions, because it's going to be dealing a lot with the finance because it's in the second house. So it's going to be including also the Federal Reserve, and our country's monies are very much into the forefront of with Pluto and Capricorn in the second house. And we've been seeing that. And now Saturn and Neptune have left Capricorn. Pluto's still there. So the remnants of all that structuring and activity are now, they're starting to transform, but it's still going to take a few years. Now I'm going to the United States solar chart. As I said, I always start with the Sibley chart, and as I explained it before, so I use the Sagittarius 12 degrees 21 minutes Sibley chart, Sagittarius rising. So I do the solar return chart, but I use an equal house. Now some people I look at both charts. I look at the Placidius and also the equal house. I get a general feel from the chart, but in doing my predictions and my casting the future of the year, I use solar returns because it comes an equal representation of 30 days. So each house will be 30 days, and I step it through. So I place the ascendant on the first house for the solar return. Then I move around, adding 30 days each cusp, and I'll show that. And I look at the signs and planets for each house in the associated aspects for that time period. So this helps determine the astrological analysis. I also look at the signs in the house. I look at the rulerships, and thus the year ahead will unfold. So here is the solar return for our 2020 chart. Now, the thing of it is, you cast the solar return, which gives you from the solar year from your birthday to your next birthday. Now, in the case of the United States, since it's July 4th, we're going to go through 2 calendar years. So this is the chart for July 4th 2020. So this chart will be in effect until July 4, 2021, which is another chart. So I've already stepped through. This would be July to this would be the month of July 2020. This would be the month of August 2020, September 2020. This was October, and this was November. This was the election time, and then of course then it was December, and now we come to January 4th, 2021. So we're in this period. So I will step through, and this is a period that has Taurus on it. It's a Venus, so we have Venus there, and like I say, previous to this, we had a very turbulent time. Mars conjunct Chiron. Everything was, and Neptune there. It was a contentious election. There was illusion. There was deception. Neptune here, and then Mars was heightened emotions, passions. That after the 4th, that Mars was right sitting on the we'll say the passions of the country and what happened in the elections. In Chiron, there's a lot of wounds that need to be healed from the election. And then in December, Uranus was there, kicking up a lot of we'll say contention, unexpected events that with Uranus and Taurus. And now we've headed into this. This was the inauguration period. It had Taurus there. And so this was a chart. Then I'll step through. This will be the month of February, basically from the 4th to the 3rd of March. And then this will be March, April, May, and June. That's how I'll be stepping through. And I'll be looking at the planets in the rulerships for each one of these periods for the first 6 months till actually July 3rd. And I'll be able to, and I will step through and explain what's happening. As before, I showed the aspects. Sun is in Cancer, moon's in Capricorn for the solar return. So we have a Capricorn moon. That's a cardinal Earth moon. Finances are going to be very much on the minds of the people. Cancer is always the Cancer sun, the heart of this country. The ascendant is Scorpio. So it's going to be a Pluto-Mars energy that's on the ascendant, and that's a tough energy. We've seen a lot of passions, a lot of transformation, large groups of people being involved, large activities, hitting organizations. It's been a lot going on. Leo's in the midheaven in the equal chart, but in the Placidus is the Virgo. But the key aspects for this chart was Sun conjunct Mercury opposing the moon. So there was great balancing happening between the energies of the country and the people. They were in opposition. The communications were caught up in two sides to every story. Mars is conjunct Chiron square the moon. So the energy, the passions of the country were feeding the wounds of the country and squaring the moon. So there was a lot of energy and differences happening in this. So this year, and it's going to continue on for another 6 months. And Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto were conjunct Capricorn in the second house, and they were also this energy in the second house is opposing the energies of our eighth house energy. So you had the moon right here opposing the sun and Mercury, and then you had all this Capricorn energy. While some people could say the deep state, the bureaucracy, the structures of government opposing the energy of the country. So very contentious year, with especially with the square from Mars squaring the moon and squaring Mercury, a powerful T square in the fifth house, and this was the period right after the election. So the T square manifested all this opposing energy last year in November. This was November, and then December, and then we had January. So, okay. So in January, as I said, just to go back to say, this is the January period. So we have Taurus rising, Venus is the ruler, and I'll go from there. So with Venus and Gemini ruling this period, communications will try to create harmony. There will be two sides to the story, with Mars energizing the irony of this period. Mars is still very active in this. Previously, December was extremely tumultuous, creating suspicion and deception with the energy carrying over this period. I wrote this about 3 or 4 months ago. So so I'm just saying this is what I wrote when I gave my talk back in December. Only the truth will set the country free and promote harmony. Then February is is the next month, and just to step through, this is February here for that. The karmic mission, the North Node is there for the country is placed in this month's period. Mercury, being the planet of the communications, rules the house, is placed in the country's sign Cancer. So Mercury's there with the sun. So the life force, the sun, opposes the heart and soul of the country, the moon, causing the need to reconcile the country's energy. Only love will keep the fabric of the country's soul together. So February is going to be very contentious too. All the Capricorn energy is going to be, so we're seeing it now. There's going to be the bureaucratic structures of government are really going to be pushing on the heart and soul of the country. So so this is hold on, I have it here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just bringing it back so people can see it too. So, okay, so this is what I'm showing why. And you see the nodes are placed here too. So this is the period that's really bringing we'll say the sole purpose of the country into fruition. So February is going to be a critical month for the country. So we're going to have to find a resolution in love, because this is going, and we're seeing the executive, like I was saying here, very powerfully exerting themselves, and that's the sun. You see, the sun is the executive. The sun has already started taking the executive action. It's going to even continue more. And and we go into March. The country continues the process of healing, with the faux truth still evading revelation. So again, in this period, we have Cancer on the cusp. So the moon rules Cancer, and the moon is in Capricorn. So the state continues to pull on the energy of the country, and visions become illusions, illusions become visions, and so this is going to be another what is real, what is true type of occurrence in March. February is going to be, like I say, it's going to set the tone for the rest of the solar chart, how it shakes out. And unless we find resolution in love, it's going to continue on in a very difficult through March way, with the bureaucracy pulling more, I think, away, pulling we'll say, individual liberties and rights and freedoms, and pulling at that, because Cancer is also the loving energy of the country. April, it shows the sun here because it's a cusp ruled by Leo, begins to shine with sunlight starting through the clouds. But it's all going to depend on the executive, because the sun is the executive, and it's in the 8th house opposing the moon. So it depends on this if the executive, the president, starts, we'll say, putting out the olive branch. Expansion of government through executive actions may recur. We've been seeing that. There's been over 30 executive actions. It's a chart, and it looks like it's going to continue unless things change in April. Then the sun will start shining through. Directives and communications from the president drive these new directions. So this period is ruled by the sun. The sun is in the 8th house opposing the moon in Capricorn. So unless we find a balance between the love of country and the freedoms of the people, and we'll say the structures of government, and then it's going to be difficult. If we find that and the executive strikes a new balance, then the sunlight will start shining through. May is ruled by Virgo, and so it's communications and written documents from the president are received. One thing I wanted to say about April. April is actually the 10th house, and that is also the president and executive. So everything, and it had Leo there. So it's a double energetic aspect of the key of that month is going to be what the president and the executive branch does. May then shifts to the 11th house, and it's communications and written. It's a Virgo, So Virgo is more Mercurico, and Mercury is conjunct the Sun. So it's again tied to the executive. Written documents from the president are received by the legislature for vote, mediation, and debate. The 11th house deals with the legislative branch of government. So things coming from the executive are going to wind up in the legislature. Great deliberation is going to happen because the moon's opposing the sun, Mercury, and it will occur and may not be resolved quickly or until the next month's period. June is the 12th house of this solar return, and it has Libra on it, the Venus. So efforts are made to reveal hidden activities. However, criminal activities are likely to remain concealed because Scorpio is strongly placed in that house. Scorpio holds its secrets, and it also can be actively guard those secrets. Now, secret negotiations may lead to an international agreement. So there's going to be a lot in the international. It may happen during this period with Scorpio there, but I think the next solar return, which I get into, is really going to show how significant what's happening on the international, and I'll get more into that. Things could happen in this month, May and June, on the international scene, which I'm going to talk about. I think they're going to happen most likely in September, and I'll explain, but they may happen earlier, especially in this June period where Scorpio is, and Scorpio has been a lot of wartime actions have happened during the energies of Scorpio because the fixed energy of the Antares energy comes into play. And the ancients considered the fixed star Antares the augur of war. Okay, let's go to the next solar return. So on July 4th, 2021, the country has a new birthday. So the new birthday, I cast the chart to here, and you can see that it has an Aquarius energy rising, and Jupiter is in Pisces in the first house. That's positive because that shows an expansion of the emotional energy. The sun is in the fifth house of speculations and stock markets. So hopefully the stock market will start righting itself a little bit at this time. But we got to look at the aspects, what's happening. Uranus does have the Uranus conjunct moon, which is in Taurus, is also sextiling the sun. So that's the positive aspect. Now, the difficult aspects of this chart are the Saturn in the 12th house, secret enemies, secret negotiations. It is in Aquarius, and the air signs are more receptive to Saturn than the water signs. So we have it in fixed Aquarius, but it is opposing the midpoint, and the midpoint is between, or the conjunction of Venus and Mars. So we're walking the fine balance here, and this is the house of the military, remember, of fine balance between, we'll say, peaceful actions and military actions, and Saturn is here, and the big factor on this is that Saturn is in a strong square within 1 degree of Uranus, and Uranus is within a square of 1 degree to Mars. So a very large T-square is taking place in here, taking 4 planets in, very powerful planets, 2 personal planets and 2 major outer planets. So this T-square energy, and then the moon is involved, the people. So this is a very stirring T-square. And the periods, like I said, I'll step through that. So that's one deep concern I have for this chart. And there's another square between Chiron and the sun. And again, this is where we need to fulfill the individual. Chiron's back in Aries, and that's a natural placement in the Sibley chart of Aries. So the individual is at stake. And, are they going to suppress a large portion of the population? And in the second house, and also that deals with money. When people are suppressed, their money is affected. It squared the sun. So the executive going to be challenging the individual and cause wounds? Is the executive going to, and again, there's another square. I guess I'm just looking at, but I'll just redo that. So that's a lot of the things taking energy. So this is the July, then August. September's the month I'm greatly worried about because that's the big activation of the T-squared from military action, secret enemies, and Uranian abrupt actions and then fixed energies involved, which could be very substantial. So the sun is in Cancer, the moon is in Taurus in this chart. It is conjunct the Uranus, which Uranus, the moon, can stir things up. So the people are going to have it. Sometimes it can stir you up positively, sometimes it can stir you up negatively, but it's going to be fixed energy in Taurus. So it's really going to strike the chord of the soul. Ascendant is Aquarius. That's the fixed air sign. So one of the ways we need to approach is use we'll say the intellectual capacity of the country to try to think our way out of this. The ruler of the charts are Uranus and Saturn. I use both of them. Uranus is the modern, Saturn is the classical rulership. Midheaven is Scorpio in the equal chart, Sagittarius and Placidus. Now, the key aspects, as I was saying, Saturn sextiles Chiron, but opposes Mars and squares Uranus. So these energies are all, the individual is going to be the key, and the key of healing is to protect the individual, Chiron and Aries. There's the big T square of Saturn opposing Mars and Uranus squaring both Saturn and Mars from the third. The sun does sextile Uranus. So if we use the Uranian energy in Taurus and pull back and take well thought out actions, we could maybe mitigate some of the emotional stress and strain on the fabric of the people, the moon, the soul of the country. Uranus squares Mars, as I said, that is a very stirring aspect. Mars, planet of directed energies, which could be passions, could be the military, and Uranus abrupt actions. The sun squares Chiron, as I said, the challenges to the individual, freedoms of speech, freedoms of the individual's rights. Then Venus trines the north node and sextiles the south node. And so I'll go on from there. And Mercury squares Neptune. Let me go back to Mercury squares Neptune. Neptune is, of course, the planet of illusions, and it's also visions. When it squares Neptune's in a natal chart, sometimes that individual has a hard time telling the truth. It's going to be very hard ferreting out the truth this year. And that Mercury is conjunct the sun and is squaring Neptune in Pisces. So there's a lot of water energy and deception there. So unless I said with love is the key and putting out the olive branch, if that's not put out and lies, deception, and propaganda are put out by this, and the sun is involved, and that's the executive branch, it's going to be even more difficult because it's going to upset the soul of the country even more. So that I'll just leave it at that. And that's I always see when there's that square between Mercury and Neptune, and in this case, the sun is feeding it, and also it's in water signs. The emotions are going to pervade maybe the truth. So we'll start with July. So I wish I could be more upbeat. There are a few good aspects, but it all depends on what transpires. So now in July, a complicated period of expansion of the country's vision, because we have Jupiter Neptune in the first. Because remember, we have, I'll just go back here, we have this Jupiter Neptune. I'm looking at the planets, and the ruler is Uranus Saturn. So and Uranus gets brought into this through its rulership, and it's part of that big T squared. So a complicated period of expansion and of the country's vision, and coming to grips with hidden secrets and suppressed information, Saturn in the 12th, because Saturn is the classical ruler of Aquarius. Large organizations and government agencies try to influence and direct the country. Freeing the modes of the media from censorship is attempted. So July, they're going to attempt to do that. New means of transportation or communications may be conceived because Uranus is in the third house. Let me see, where is Uranus? Uranus is in the third house of not only communications, but also transportations. But this is going to be all about transportation, communications, and also the truth. August is a period that turns attention. Now in August, we have Sagittarius on the cusp, and that gets, this is the wrong chart. Let me go to the next one. We have Pisces on the cusp, and the ruler sits in conjunction of that cusp, but we have Chiron in Aries in the third house. So it's a period that turns attention onto the economy and finances, because the second house of this period is economy and finances. So emotionally, we need some relief financially. So there's going to be a new focus on the individual and small business, because Chiron represents individual activities, and in Aries, it means like the individual actuating his financial means to make through small businesses or his individual portfolios. So there's a new focus on individuals and small businesses. They're actually the engine of the country. Most people, and they have taken a big hit. So August is going to be a very critical time to try to bring back we'll say the engine of small businesses and the individual and the economy. The country's passion for commerce is rewarded with its wealth once again increasing through innovation. So if we can get the individual and small businesses going, the innovation will come into place. Now, September is the month that I worry most about. And that's the month where we have, and I'll just go back just to show quickly for the thing. This is the September month. We have Aries there, that's ruled by Mars. And Mars is part of that big T-square squaring Uranus, military action. And Saturn's there, secret enemies. And so it's a time of unexpected forces. Uranus pull on the soul, the country, the moon, because Uranus conjuncts the moon. With Mars squared Uranus and opposing Saturn in the T-square, an unexpected event or attack could suddenly happen from a belligerent party. Mars energy could possibly initiate mobilization of the country or military. It's in the sixth house of the military for a sustained effort. And Uranus is in Taurus. Could China be on the move against Taiwan? Today, China threatened Taiwan. I wrote this back in December or November, I can't remember. And they threatened if Taiwan tries to be independent, I'm just paraphrasing it, that there's going to be an act of war. Also, I heard that the administration, President Trump had negotiated an arms deal with Taiwan. He was sending 7 new weapon systems to Taiwan to protect them from, we'll say, air attacks and sea attacks. I read today, they didn't say specifically, but they said that the present administration has put a hold on foreign sales of weapons. And I think that's Taiwan. So China must have put pressure on the administration to not sell or send arms to Taiwan. I also read that China is building very large amphibious landing crafts. Why would you build large landing crafts for troops unless you were planning to invade? Also, the Korean Peninsula is at effect here too. I worry about that too. And there's other things in that. I'm not going to get totally into it, but I think that North Korea could easily take advantage of a situation if China moves on Taiwan to move quickly on to South Korea. And that could also involve American troops and possible losses. And also our fleet is in the Chinese Sea. So this is I see this as the most contentious period. But on a positive note, new ideas or inventions can have a practical impact on the country's commerce. And that's the genius and innovation of Uranus conjunct the moon. And also challenged and triggered to invent and create with the squares to Saturn and Mars. But this is the most contentious period. It's a very worrisome period. I see in September, and if China continues building these big crafts and Taiwan doesn't get the proper capabilities to defend themselves from sea and aerial assaults, then this could happen. And again, I worked Department of Defense for 12 years, and I retired from the government. So I try to come from things from an experiential point of view and study. Research is a key to astrology, reading the source documents and reading, not taking secondhand knowledge or filtered, but try to get to the sources. And I looked at this and in my previous knowledge base tells me this could be a challenging time. In October now we have, that's the 4th house in our solar return chart. We have Taurus on the cusp. That brings Venus back into play, and Venus is in the. Let me look at the chart here. Venus is in. Oh, it's in the 6th house, conjunct Mars. So we have, this house contains the country's karmic destiny for 2021, and that means the North Node. Let me just go back to the chart. The North Node. So I'm in this period. So the North Node is here. This is the realization, and it's in the house of the homeland. So communications, Gemini is the house of communications. Communications are going to be critical, and it's at 9 degrees. So right now it is sextiling Venus. So if we do proper communications, things could maybe be averted and we could really achieve what we're supposed to this period. So that is, so again, it's this house contains the country's karmic destiny for 2021 with the purpose of balancing and distributing the energies occurring in the homeland. Communications are challenged and can be nebulous because Mercury is squared Neptune, and this how, so that's always a challenge. Censorship may be increased and subsequently be challenged, but the outlet is through Venus, and the Venus energy sextiling the North Node and the Venus in Leo. And Mercury's in this house too. That's why I brought Mercury into it. And Mercury is, of course, squaring Neptune. So that again, if they're not truthful, or if we have censorship or misinformation, it's going to really cause a lot of problems. Now, if there is problems in September, there's going to be a lot of spin coming out. What happened and why it happened. So that's why it's a karmic time too. And I'll just leave it at that. November should have my glasses on here. Let me go back to November. It's easier. November is this period. It has Gemini. It's another Mercury period. So Mercury is the ruler of this period, and it is squared Neptune. So let's go back to see here again. Communications are improved through unexpected help from powerful forces. The founding energy is placed in this period, the sun. Oh, wait, I got that. Oh, did I get the right one? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still in, am I in October? No, I'm in, okay. The sun is placed in the house. That's why you need this. So this is the period of November. It's ruled by Gemini with Mercury, but the sun takes predominance in this house. And remember, the sun also is like the energy of the country, but it's also the executive branch. So the founding energy is placed in this time period, that's the Cancer energy, and helps to create new resources and innovation. So Uranus is in the 5th house sextile the sun also. So we have some good energies happening here. So what disturbances that happen in September and October can help to be somewhat resolved through the sun. December is the 6th house of the sun, and that has Cancer on it. So the health of the country needs to be balanced. Health treatments are mobilized. The 6th house is armed forces, and Mars is there with Venus. So armed forces and police may be used in the benevolent purposes because Venus is conjuncted, but still serving the direction of the country's executive authority. The challenging energy squared to Mars from Uranus creates an unexpected results and strain on resources. Also that Saturn T-square. So there's a lot of challenging energies. Even when there's good energies, there's still all these challenging energies. And again, with having Mars and Venus part of that big T squared, it takes us right back to that Uranus conjunct the moon, even in December, where things might start looking up a little bit in November, December could be a very difficult month again. Hopefully Venus takes hold and things can get resolved and a more positive energy can be created. So that's up to January. I take it up to January, but I did one other thing because on the chart, Leo is on the 7th house cusp, which again means the executive, the ruler of Leo is the sun, and the sun represents the country and the executive branch. So January of 2022, just a little forecast for the next year's predictions for the year. The executive will have to address and solve these and any imbalances in the country by April 2022. And I'm looking ahead at the chart, but April 2022 is on the 10th house of this solar return, and that's where the South Node is. So if I go back to the chart, this is April of next year of 2022. You can see the South Node and Midheaven are there, and that's the executive branch. So this period right here for January, the executive is the key, and all the disturbances that are happening here, this is his time to try to resolve it. And the karmic energy that came in from the election and previously, if it is because it's in Sagittarius, the truth sign, if that is not resolved, all the actions that happened here will continue on through the year. So, well, did I get that right? How did I get so far? Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Okay. Okay. Getting tired here a little bit. Okay. So that's why I wanted to put, and I said, great consequences are at stake, and the lords of karma may intercede. And the reason why I say that is that a country is not only the people. If you take, there's a model that I kind of, from the theosophy and from my studies, if you believe in that there's many mansions, as I was saying, in my father's house, there are many mansions. If this went out, so I would have told you. And if you take the theosophy, there's various levels of, we'll say, of the domains of the spirits and the higher angels. And on this level is the watchers and guardians. And these may be very advanced souls, adepts and watchers. And then the next level are the angels and arbiters of karma. Then there's the lords of karma. If there are things, if you study, like 1960 was a very, we'll say, karmic year, as this year in 2020 was, and the lords of karma came into action. And I think we're seeing that the possibility of things are not approached in the most prudent and truthful manner, and we'll say spiritual manner, we're going to have actions on a very high karmic level. And that's where wars and conflicts come into being to work out the karma. That gets into another branch, the spiritual metaphysical branch of astrology, and that ties into theosophy and other things. But I'm just saying, I put this out here because if we can't resolve it at this level, then the higher levels, if depending on your belief system, is I believe that the actions of the divine will start interceding. It's hard as a human to try to understand these higher levels, but this is a drawing that I use because, I mean, you can see these great occurrences, something before World War I, and that's another discussion. I'm writing an article about that, a presentation in the future, how karmic actions on these mundane levels go up to the higher levels. We're down here on the earth level, but above us there are many layers. And then above it all is the archangels. And above that, of course, is the source energy. So I always end a talk on a poem that I usually have written. And I like ending on this one with God deals the cards. And this is a poem I wrote a few years back. God created the deck. These are the universal principles. They guide us all. God is the divine dealer. All his creations are the players. God can deal the hand God wishes or desires. When God deals a special card, we have or experienced a miracle, or a new universe can be born. God is the divine dealer. Sometimes through will and heart, we get to replay our cards or get a new card dealt. God doesn't roll dice, but God deals the cards. We must all play the hand we are dealt. And that ends the presentation. Thank you. And I'll end the recording now.